The finals has 6 melee weapons with 2 on each class. There's the sword and dagger on the light, the riot shield and dual blades on the medium, and the spear and sledgehammer on the heavy. Each of these weapons are unique in their own way, but today I want to ask, which one is the best? Which melee weapon will do the most damage, be the easiest to use, and which one is the best overall? But first, I want to give a big thank you to my community. I asked y'all to help push us over the 100 subscriber mark, and you did not disappoint. We are currently at 125 subscribers, and most of those subs were from my last video. So thank you so much. I appreciate the support from every one of you. And if you like this video, and if you haven't subscribed yet, please consider doing so. It is the best way to help out this channel. And now, back to the video. So to start off, we have to have some criteria for how we're comparing these weapons. I have made 3 criteria for these weapons, and I'll rank each of them on a scale of 1 to 6. So there will be a last place and a first place for each category. First place will get 6 points, last one will get 1 point, so on and so forth, 5th place 2 points, stuff like that. And at the end, whoever has the best overall score is the winner. So our 3 categories are damage, basically measuring how many hits it takes to get a kill, utility, which measures how useful the weapon's kit is, and ease of use. How difficult is it to use each weapon? I did have a class kit category, which would have covered how good each class is with melee as a whole, but that more or less seems like something that was dedicated, or was supposed to be dedicated, for like a whole video as a whole, as opposed to just one portion of this one. So maybe I'll make a video on that at some point in the future. But moving on to our first category, damage. So with this category, we're measuring the least amount of hits needed to get a kill. Now some of these weapons do have heavy attacks that deal more damage than a light attack, so with those ones, we'll use the heavy attacks as much as possible, and if a heavy attack can be supplemented by a light attack, then in general, that will be the suggested combo. And when it comes to damage, we have a pretty clear bottom 3 and a pretty clear top 3. So at the bottom, we have a bit of a spear problem. Actually, the bottom 3 just in general might be the second most controversial thing I do here. There's another one that I think will get a certain part of the community a bit angry about this. But either way, the spear has its regular light attacks, but it also has what I call the montage. Basically, its heavy attack with the spear will do 3 big AoE swings that you can't cancel out of, and here's the problem with it. If we count it as 1 hit, because yes, technically it does take 1 click to start the montage, and you're gonna have to finish those 3 swings anyways because you can't really cancel out of it, then it would be tied for first, which wouldn't make any sense. But if we counted it as 3 hits, then it would be tied for last, which also doesn't make a lot of sense. Or it would be tied for second to last, to be honest with you, but we're not gonna go there just yet. So we're gonna count each hit individually, because for one thing, I don't want to deal with ties, and also it does seem like a good compromise because it is technically 1 movement, but also technically it's 3 hits, so we're gonna meet somewhere in the middle on this. So with that out of the way, let's start with number 6 in this category, the dual blades. Since we count the spear montage hits individually, we'll also be counting the dual blade hits individually, because yes, it is 1 click for the 2 swings of the dual blades, but they are technically 2 hits, and you can hit one and then miss the other. It's possible to do that. And that's also another way to avoid a tie with the riot shield. So that's how we're doing it. If you disagree with me on that, you can leave a comment down below if you want. So with the system that we're using here, it'll take 3 hits to kill a light, 5 hits to kill a medium, 8 hits to kill a heavy. And again, that might seem a bit unfair to dual blade users, because if I had counted the 2-hit combo with this weapon as 1 hit, then it would be tied with the riot shield. But looking at the game damage stats, which would have been the tiebreaker, the riot shield would still win. Not being in last place, that is. It is in 5th. It takes 2 hits to kill a light, 3 hits to kill a medium, and 4 hits to kill a heavy. And then the spear is in 4th place. We covered why we're putting it here. We covered how we're counting this. It kills a light in 2 montage hits, a medium in 3 montage hits, and a heavy in 3 montage hits and a light attack. And now moving on to our less controversial top 3. We have the sword coming in at number 3, killing a light in 1 heavy attack and 1 light attack, killing a medium in 2 heavy attacks, and killing a heavy in 2 heavy attacks and 1 light attack. Now I will mention that the sword can be played in different ways, and what I just showed might not be the best combos you could use, but they are technically the optimal ones, so that's how we're counting it. But then in number 2, we have the sledgehammer. One hitting the light with a heavy attack 2 hitting a medium with 1 heavy attack and 1 light attack, and 2 hitting a heavy with 2 heavy attacks. And I will say, these ones are the optimal combos you should be going for in an optimal 1v1 situation. And then at number 1, we of course have the dagger. It will 1-hit a medium and a light with its backstab attack, and it will kill a heavy and a backstab attack, and just follow it up with a light attack. You'll kill him right away. So early on, which is a stretch because this is almost like half the length of one of my regular videos, we do see some early winners and some early losers. The Riot Shield, Dual Blades, and the Spear are in the bottom 3, where they could have tied. They all could have tied together if we had counted the hits differently, but we didn't to avoid the ties. But in the top 3, we have the Sword, we have the Dagger, and we have the Sledgehammer, all taking an early lead. And then we move on to utility. So this section basically covers how useful each of these weapon abilities are. And what I mean by abilities is the right click, basically the gimmick that it does. And there are no points for uniqueness here. We're just simply measuring if it does what it's supposed to do. You're measuring how helpful it is to the player and how well it compares to the other melees. And yes, the Dual Blades are in 6th place again. The main gimmick of the Dual Blades is the bullet reflection. Basically, you hold your swords up defensively, and then you reflect about half of them back at the enemy. You're still taking half of them yourself. And as the gimmick stands right now, it does kind of seem a bit underwhelming and inconsistent. Doesn't always really seem to work properly. And when it does, the damage isn't great, and you yourself are still taking damage. And while you can make this work, you can make any of these melees work, but we are comparing them to each other and ranking them against each other. And I'm just saying that this one gimmick here is probably the worst out of all the other ones here, but you could still make it work. You might get a kill every once in a while with this, and you'd be like, oh my god, I got a kill with this, it's the best. It isn't the best. And it's not really worth it compared to some of the other weapons on this list. I think in time, they might get buffed, it might get reworked or something, but for now, we're gonna keep it down at number 6. So numbers 5 through 2 was a bit hard for me to place. Some of these were up at the top, down at the bottom, or some of these were up at the top, then I moved them down to the bottom, some of them moved a couple of spaces here and there. So if you disagree with some of these, just know that I might have agreed with you at one point, but overall, I'm pretty confident with this list. But either way, we have the Riot Shield at number 5. Now this does do its job. It blocks damage that hits the shield. That's what it's made to do, and it does it. Basically, if you play Riot Shield, you get your rectangle. Is the rectangle that big? It's your rectangle. Anything not covered by your rectangle is fair game. And the reason you have this ability is to 1, block damage, and 2, close the gap with the enemy. And we'll get into how effective it is to pull that off in the next category. But the reason it's down so low in this category is because yes, it does what it sets out to do. You want this rectangle to block damage, your rectangle will be blocking damage. But the other weapons on this list, I would argue, have better things to offer. And also, if you do want something to block damage, Heavy is like the class to do that with. It has so many abilities to block damage with, and you might make the argument, well, why not give the medium something to do that with as well? And I agree with that, and that's why we have it here. But it's not the best at blocking damage in the game. It might be the best on medium, but in general, I think there's better things we can do with melees here. So then we go to number 4. At number 4, we have the Dagger. And I was gonna place this in 2nd place originally. This was gonna be a 2nd place winner right here. I literally rewrote the script when I was writing the sentence at number 4 we have, because the sword was gonna be here. It was gonna be at number 4. Now the Dagger's at number 4. And the main thing about why it's here and not higher up, like I'm changing this, like I changed this while I was writing the script. But the main reason it's here is because we're not judging utility. Wait, no, we are. The main reason why it's here is because we're not judging uniqueness, we are judging utility. So what do I mean by that? Let's take, for example, the 1216. Its main gimmick is that it has a mini reload every 4th shot. Now this is very unique to the gun, but it offers little in the way of utility. In fact, it actively holds the gun back because you can't shoot while it's doing its little mini reload. The reason why the gimmick is here is to make sure that it's not overpowered. With the Dagger, its main gimmick is that backstab ability. So you can't hit the player if they're in front of you. You have to get them on their back side. Now, granted, it is like a whole side of them, so it is kind of forgiving in that way. You can like hit them kind of like 180 a little bit, if you know what I'm saying. So it is forgiving in that way. But the main thing is that this gimmick is not really for the player. It is more or less for the sandbox. It is here to hold the dagger back, because if it didn't have the backstab ability, if it just did that damage with the heavy attack and any part of the character, this would be the most overpowered weapon in the game. Every lobby would just have a light dashing around, have their heavy attack up, and then boom, just insta-kill somebody. That's the reason why the gimmick is here. It is not to help the player. But the reason why I was going to have it higher up was because there is a risk-reward factor to it. If you get that kill, it is so worth it. If you get that backstab, it is so worth it. Because you're either going to A, get a kill, or B, get somebody so low you can just follow it up with a light attack and then basically kill them. It is very powerful, which is why I was going to put it so high up, but for the reason I just mentioned, it's going to stay down a bit lower, but I am going to put it higher up than the dual blades and the riot shield. At number 3, we have the spear. So unlike the dagger, this ability is here for the player. Its right click ability is 3 massive AoE swings that deal more damage than its regular hits. And I'm not going to spend too much time on this one in particular, but this ability is what really makes it the true king of AoE for melees and possibly in the entire game. If you want an area of effect weapon, this is where you go, even if you disagree with everything else that I'm saying here. This point is kind of hard to go against. The main drawback with this though, and I do understand why it is here, is you can't really cancel the montage. You have to do those 3 swings, one right after the other. And the reason why you can't cancel it is because you would do a big heavy attack and then cancel it, and if someone's getting away you can chase them down, do another big heavy attack, and that just doesn't really feel balanced. So I do understand that. It is kind of like the dagger, but like not to the extent of the dagger, which is why it's being held back at 3 and it's not going up any higher. But either way, this spear's utility is top tier for what it does, which is why it deserves this spot. Now moving on to number 2, we have the sword. Originally, I had dagger at this spot, with the sword being at number 4, but I do like this a bit better. Even though the sword's heavy attack does do less damage than the dagger, it makes up for that with the amount of mobility it grants the player. The sword's right click is a lunge that you charge up to rapidly move forward and damage any players in the way. Its lunge can go through multiple players, allowing for some AoE damage, and it grants you some mobility as well, which if you play light melee, you know that's important. I see a lot of sword players using evasive dash with this weapon, and even if I play invis instead, which I know isn't what a lot of people do, I do see the vision with this mobility tech, which is why it's placed in this spot. And at number 1 for this category, we have the sledgehammer. This weapon has one of the most deadly, destructive, and just plain fun attacks in the game. It has the second best damage out of all the melees, and it can also destroy everything, like everything. Except Goo takes 2 hits for some reason. I don't have time for that. It is hard for me to put into words how much strategy and fun creative plays can be put into this weapon. Being able to break down environments that people are either using for cover or to hold a choke point can be game changing. Being able to bring cash out or cash box down a level, or being able to go down to its level instantly is crazy. This sledgehammer is definitely the definition of utility. So at the end of this category, we don't see too much change in the rankings near the bottom, and in fact, Dual Blades and Riot Shield have almost definitely solidified their spot at the bottom, while Spear keeps its head above water with 7 points, and at the top of the list is a bit of an upset, with the Sledgehammer taking the lead with 11, and the Dagger and Sword are now tied at 9. So even though the Dagger placed in 4th in this category, its damage has kept it in the top 3. But now, we move on to the Ease of Use category. This category doesn't necessarily ask if the melee is easy to use, it just asks how easy is it compared to the other melee weapons. So to clarify at the start, don't think that most of these weapons are difficult. I don't think that most of these weapons are generally difficult, and if you are struggling with one of these, use the practice range and just play with it more and more, and you'll see yourself improve with it. But at number 6, we're gonna kill the momentum for one particular weapon, because it is the only one that I had to practice with in order to get good footage for this video to play in the background. Decent footage, at least, I don't know. I did not have to do that with any of these other weapons, and that weapon is the dagger. The main problem with this weapon is that when people see you, they try to shoot at you, and when they shoot at you, they tend to face forwards, and when your entire utility is based around backstabbing people, you can see where the skill gap starts to form. Now I know that some people are already getting mad, but listen, if I put anything else at 6, I would have to defend why the dagger backstab is easier to pull off. Because the dagger is the backstab. The left click hits like a pool noodle, so if you want to do that damage, you're gonna have to use the backstab. Now to be fair, I did try out some other methods than using dash. I tried using an invis strat, where basically I just camped at a point, and whether it was a cash out in progress or a cash box, I would just sit there invis, just waiting for somebody to walk up to it, and I just walk over and stab them. It actually worked out better than I had imagined. Like in this clip that I'm showing on screen here, they really let me repeatedly pull off the same tomfoolery time and time again. But to be honest, I don't think that was a very good strat. It just happened to work out for me. Killing someone in a legitimate 1v1 with this weapon is nearly impossible. You have to work with people being unfocused or facing away for some reason, unless you want to dash into a backstab, which relies on the enemy not turning into your dash, which you clearly telegraph. And that is much more difficult than anything else that I'm going to mention today, which is why it is at number 6. And at number 5, we have the Riot Shield. Now I know I've placed this thing consistently at 5, but that's really where it belongs. It's not the worst, but it's definitely not the best. Good Riot Shield players have to be aware of their surroundings, their enemies, their teammates, their position, more than most other players in this game. And they also need to know when to block and when to push. And I can't tell you, in every situation what you have to do or give you a blanket statement of what you should be doing. But just know that if you're in a position where maybe you're getting flanked, you may have to choose, am I going to push one of them, get a quick kill, and then go at the other one with my shield up? Or am I just going to back away? And if you don't have that second option, kind of proves my point that you need to have a lot of technical skill to do well with this weapon. And then also with this weapon, why it's a bit lower on ease of use, is the left click. It just kind of feels a bit slow and a bit janky, and it's not the most forgiving. It's definitely a love it or hate it type situation with that baton. I do like it personally, but I know that a lot of people won't like it. If you try it out, you'd be like, this left click kind of sucks. It's kind of a niche thing. Not really for everyone, but if you like it and you're one of the few people that like it, I'm with you. I do really like this, and I know it's not the best, but I do like it, and I will use it in competitive play. But again, I know it's not good, but I'll still use it. At number 4, we have the dual blades. Yes, it's not last. The only reason I put it above the Riot Shield is the swing of each blade. They're definitely a lot easier, they're definitely a lot quicker, definitely a lot easier to hit than the Riot Shield. So I think that most people will like this a bit better than the Riot Shield swing. And the bullet reflection with it, for ease of use at least, it's a bit of an added bonus, where sometimes it kind of makes people just walk away, not want to deal with you, even though they probably could have killed you. But I would say, personally, I might be biased here, but I would say that the Riot Shield is a better weapon, but I do know that those dual blades are easier to use. At number 3, we have the Spear. The Spear's light attack has 3 separate hits. The first one, at least I believe, is the easiest to hit, and it also has some really good reach with that left click. And its second heavy attack. Like, look where I'm standing right here. I'm hitting these shots. That is insane compared to the rest of these melees. The main problem though is that you gotta know when to use your montage, because you can't really cancel it into a left click attack or into a running animation, and while you can cover some distance with it, you're not gonna be that fast with it compared to using your sprint. Which again, I understand why that is, but once you start getting that montage going in a group of enemies, you'll start to see the vision with this weapon. At number 2, we have the Sword. Unlike Dagger, which does require a specific playstyle, which needs a good amount of skill, this really doesn't. And I know that there's a lot of top tier players who have like a very specific playstyle with it, but like with this weapon in particular, you can just use left click and you'll be fine. You can use Invis with it like I do and you'll be fine. I know a friend who doesn't even know that the lunge exists on this weapon, and he does fine. A lot of people think that this weapon is only for sweats, and that's not really true. You can use it just like as a casual player and do well with it. Now, if you want to get the most out of this weapon, dash with sword and a lot of skill, you're gonna need that. But honestly, if you're just looking to have fun and you're just trying to be a nuisance, Invis sword, it's not the worst thing in the world. So if you think it was kind of a sweaty weapon, just try it out and see if you like it. And at number 1, again, we have the Sledgehammer. This may be one of the easiest weapons to use in the game, and I have no clue whether that is a compliment or an insult. I'm not saying that every game you're going to play with this is going to be easy, but this weapon has both damage and utility on its side, and it is just plain fun. The left click on this weapon is pretty standard. It doesn't have the reach that the spear does, but it has decent range. It's also just not as janky as the riot shield is. Its swings are pretty consistent. It doesn't really require the amount of skill you need on the dagger to get that heavy attack damage in. You can really hit them from anywhere, and the heavy attack is pretty forgiving. So you just kind of walk up to somebody, hit your right click, and then that's kind of just it. There's not really much else you can ask for this weapon. If you want to try out melee for the first time in this game, use the Sledgehammer. And if you really like that, then you should start trying out some of the other melee weapons. Try out sword, try out dagger, try out, why am I blanking here? Try out the spear, try out any of the other ones, see if you like them. Maybe you were like secretly a melee player this whole time, you never know. But anyways, at the end of all of this, we have the Sledgehammer maintaining first place with 17 points. The spear careening into third with 11, just beating out the dagger with 10. Sword stayed in second. And even though the dual blades weren't in last this round, they are still in last place overall, but with just a 1 point difference with the riot shield. And I should mention again that I do use the riot shield. I'll use it in competitive content even. I just know it's not great, and I just know it's not for everyone. And hey, this is just my list. If you agree, if you disagree, let me know in the comments down below. There's probably one disagreement you have at least. Just try to keep it civil. And if you like the video, subscribing is the best way to do so. Thank you all for watching. See you later.